What is going on, guys? Matt O'Leary back with another video. I'm really excited about this one and this series that we're going to get going here. I wanted to speak to guys who have covered the college football team that some of our draft picks have come out of. So today we are talking to Chris Peak of Panther-lair. He covers Pitt college sports and college football. You can check out his website, panthers-lair.com. So I wanted to get a little insight on Carter Warren and Izzy Abanikanda. All right, I would like to welcome on Chris Peak of panthers-lair.com. You could find his coverage of Pitt athletics there. Chris, how are you? Thank you for joining me today.
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's we were just kind of joking. It's like Pittsburgh East out there. So this is fun. We're all going to be watching Jets games this year, I think, in addition to Steelers, of course.
Absolutely. There you go. So I wanted to give my audience kind of an overview on the guys that the Jets were able to land from Pitt. First up was Carter Warren. They were able to grab him in the 4th round. And something that I've noticed about him is his size is really impressive. Can you speak to how he uses his size on the football field?
Yeah, he moves well. I think Pitt listed him at 325. I forget what he measured in at for his pro day, but I mean he carries a 325 about as well as you can carry 325. That's a big number, but I mean he's a big guy. He's a tall tackle. He's not quite like the super giants like a 6'7", 6'8" guy, but I mean I think he's a solid 6'4.5", 6'5". He played a ton at Pitt, but really missed a lot of games this past season, and I think that might have caused him to drop. He started every game when they won the ACC championship 2 years ago. He was a second team all ACC player that year. But this past year, I think he only played like 4 games. And I think if he had a full season of tape, I wouldn't be surprised if he went higher than the 4th round. I think he's, you could potentially even move him inside if you want, but I think he's a good tackle prospect. I think the Jets got a steal being able to pick him up in the 4th round. I think that's, for a guy his size who moves like he does, I think that was a really good pick.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to also get into with. Like, obviously, he has the meniscus in 2022, the redshirted in 2018. But just from someone now, obviously, I haven't spent as much time on him as someone like you. But from my brief understanding, is it seemed like he was getting better year over year. Is that kind of the same vibe that you were getting watching him during his time at Pitt?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he started like 2019. I think he started every game, and he was a redshirt sophomore at that point. And it went about like you would expect it to go for a first year starting offensive lineman. But by 2 years later, like I say, where he started every game in 2021, was a big part of their ACC championship run. Kenny Pickett was the quarterback, but you need protection from your left tackle, and that's what Carter Warren provided, and was really good to the point where, and I don't know how much college your viewers or listeners follow, but with the COVID year, there's this super senior thing now where guys get an extra year of eligibility. And so after the 21 season, like Carter Warren and about 3 other offensive linemen at Pitt should have been done, but they all decided to come back and play a 6th year. And it was like a huge win. I mean, people were like over the moon about, and I mean, it's Pittsburgh, so we get excited about big guys. I mean, that's just kind of what we do. But, it's sort of a testament to how good Warren and those other guys were that Pitt fans were like, elated. They're like, oh, this is awesome. We got all these offensive linemen coming back. And I think it's a testament to how good, Carter Warren had been in particular as the left tackle. It's such an important position. And obviously it didn't quite work out. Like I said, he got hurt last year, but just, I do think that speaks to how strong of an impression and how well he was playing by 2021, which really should have been his last year of college eligibility. And like I say, it really would have been interesting to see where he got drafted if he had played all year last year.
Yeah, without a doubt. I definitely think he could have went earlier if he played the full season. Just from factoring in, obviously, as you mentioned, he only played 4 games. Were you surprised where he went, or was this right around where you figured he would go? The kind of the early day 3 for him.
Yeah, I kind of thought that would be the case. I thought maybe he could sneak into round 3 if there was somebody who really liked him, but I thought he would be like a 4th or 5th round guy. I thought, I mean, another guy we're going to talk about obviously is Izzy Abanikanda. I thought he would go earlier than Warren. They didn't go that far apart, ultimately 20-some picks, but yeah, I thought he would go a little bit earlier because there was sort of some buzz. Or as much buzz as you're going to have around guys who are projected 3rd, 4th, 5th round guys. And it was sort of surprising. It was like, oh yeah, because we didn't really see him all season last year. Kind of forgot about him as a potential pro prospect, but then there was some buzz sort of gathering throughout the offseason. You thought, wow, might have a chance to sneak into the third round, but definitely like probably I would say no later than the fifth. So yeah, he pretty much ended up where you would expect him to go. Like I say, with possibility of maybe being a little bit higher, but middle. What was he, like the 18th pick in the fourth round? I mean, that seems like a pretty good spot for him.
Absolutely. And you mentioned obviously a ton of his starting experience at left tackle. You also said that maybe someone who could move inside and play guard. Do you see him as someone who could have that flexibility to maybe switch sides, play the right side of the offensive line as well? Or is he more of like just your prototypical left tackle, leave him over there and kind of let him develop?
I mean, I think he's good enough to do both, but he is a guy who played left tackle all throughout his time at Pitt. Like I don't think he ever started a game or played any snaps at right tackle unless it was like they were doing some weird jumbo formation, or they would do some of those tackle oversets where occasionally they would bring the left tackle outside the right tackle or vice versa. But otherwise, I mean, I think he's good enough to do it. But all of his playing time has been at left tackle. So I would guess that's what the Jets want to do with him. But again, I think he's good enough, and I think he moves well enough. And he's not, like I said, 6'8". So I think at 6'4.5", 6'5", he could play guard potentially if they needed him there. And I think he could definitely play right tackle. But if I'm the Jets, I want to give him a chance at left tackle and see how, like you said, see how he develops.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned athleticism. And to me, that's a big thing from not only him, but this whole Jets draft class in general. They focused a lot on really good athletes and more on good athletes in a little bit. But the Jets run a lot of wide zone in their rushing attack. Do you see this as something that he could a system he could thrive in?
I think so. I think so. Pitt kind of went through a couple of different offensive coordinators over the course of Carter Warren's career, but I think they did some of that. It's tough to tell. It's funny with the running game because 2019, 2020, and 2021, their offensive coordinator was Mark Whipple, who I don't think he ever met a running play that he liked. I mean, he just wanted to pass the ball 6,000 times, and it worked. They ended up winning the ACC championship. Kenny Pickett was a Heisman Trophy finalist, first round pick, because they threw the ball 10,000 times a season or something like that. And so, that's probably maybe the one thing he lost by not playing much this past season. They changed offensive coordinators. Frank Signetti came in and was much more of a run-based offense. I think he would have gotten a little bit more tape as a run blocker this past season, maybe than what he had in previous years. But again, I think he's a guy who can move pretty well for his size and could probably, I think he could adapt to it, whatever the Jets want to do with him.
No, absolutely. And obviously, as a day three guy, probably not a whole lot of expectation for him to play this year. At least that's not it seems that way, not the Jets plan this year. Do you see him as someone who could maybe develop into a starting guy or a swing tackle or just a quality backup? It feels like Jet fans are very split on what the expectation should be from Warren. But just as someone who's watched him over his collegiate career, where do you think he ends up?
Yeah, I'll admit I don't know the Giants or the Jets. Oh, geez, they're going to kill me for that. I don't know I don't know the Jets offensive line depth chart all that well, but I do think the one thing with Warren, like I said, he took that 6th year at Pitt, so he's coming in. I actually just had his bio up, so he was born in 1999, so he's like 24 years old now. In his rookie year, he's going to be 24. He's not a young guy, and I think that would probably give him a leg up on having an opportunity to play sooner. I think he's had good coaching at Pitt. I think he's pretty physically developed. And like I say, he's older. You're not taking a guy who's coming out after 3 years of college who's 21 or 22. This is a 24-year-old man who's going to be 25 by his second year. So I would think that a lot of the ingredients are there to play early. But again, that's going to depend on the depth chart and then also how he's healed. And I think he's healthy. He worked a lot at Pitt's Pro Day. So I think he should be ready to go. But it'll depend on what the Jets need this year.
Absolutely. One of my favorite picks from this draft class for the Jets is Izzy Abanikanda. Just absolutely an explosive and electric rusher. Can you just speak to how that looks in game with him, as explosive as he is?
I mean, he's got that speed to just go. I mean, if it's there, if the hole is there, I mean, you talk about kind of zone runs, one cut, like put your foot in the ground and just turn up field. I mean, that's him. That's the kind of thing he can do. And he's bigger. I mean, he's 210, 215, somewhere around there, and he's running sort of lightning fast 40s. And you look at kind of how he did last year. He set the Pitt single game rushing record against Virginia Tech last season, broke a record that Tony Dorsett had held for like 40 some years. And it was just, he was really good at breaking long runs. And a lot of his touchdowns last year were long runs. he just, if he gets into the open field, he's really hard to catch, but he's not like a tiny guy. You think of like a Chris Johnson from years ago. I mean, he's built, he's thick. You watch some of the video from like Pro Day or something like that when he's in shorts. I mean, he's got tree trunks for legs. He's a big guy, but he's super fast. I think that's what he really brings to the table, and where he can really excel is because, I mean, speed, you can't teach that. You know what I mean? You can't coach that. And he brings a ton of it in. He's got areas where he's going to have to develop. He didn't work that much as a pass catcher last year. He was okay as a pass blocker. He's obviously going to need to do better in those things, in those areas. If he's going to play, be a 3-down back. But with that speed, if you can get the right blocking assignments, but get the right blocking scheme, and give him a crease, he can really go, and he can be hard. Linebackers can't really catch him, and I think it's even tough for some safeties and maybe even some corners. I mean, when he gets out there, he's gone.
No, absolutely. And we talked about, Warren and how he'd fare in a wide zone rushing attack. And it seems like Izzy would be a perfect fit in that. And you could see why the Jets would want to go with a guy like him with that explosiveness. And I thought anyway, good value for where they got him in the 5th round.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started to think when the first round happened on Thursday night, I said, oh, is this going to be one of those ridiculous years for running backs where you do stupid stuff like take 2 running backs in the top 12 picks? I was shocked that happened. But I mean, when you compare Izzy and his size, his production, and, just as importantly, kind of the wear on the tires, when you compare him against Bijan, and you compare him against Jahmyr Gibbs, and you compare him against some of those top 5 running backs, you can see why those guys were kind of rated ahead of Izzy Abanikanda. But he's got a lot of traits, I think, in his favor. When we talk about the speed, we talk about the size. He hasn't had that much work. I mean, last year was his heaviest workload. And what did he carry the ball? 390 times, or no, 390 for his career. Excuse me. I'm sorry. He had 239 carries last year. So you're looking at 150, 160 carries over the course of the previous 2 seasons. It's not that many carries. There aren't a lot of guys that were coming out in this draft class who were rated high among the running backs who had less than 400 carries. And so Izzy, I think he's got a lot of life on the tires, you know what I mean? In addition to the speed and the size, I think he compares really favorably, and he led the nation in touchdowns. I mean, he just had an ability to get there. I'm not surprised that he lasted until the 5th, because I think in general, other than that nonsense in the 1st round, NFL teams largely undervalue running backs, and probably rightfully so. I mean, I think there's a lot of data to back that up. So I figured he'd be probably a day 3 pick, maybe sneak into the 3rd round, but I figured he'd probably go on Saturday. And for the Jets to be able to, wait until the 5th round, pick 143 to get him, I agree. I think it's a huge steal. I think there's very little risk there and almost all upside, I think.
Absolutely. And you mentioned his big uptick in production. Had over 1,400 yards, 20 touchdowns. The year prior, I believe it was like 607 touchdowns. What do you think was the biggest factor to the increase in production? Was it just usage, or did something change in his game also?
No, it's usage. I mean, he had 123 carries in 2021, but he still averaged more than 5 yards per carry. You remember a few minutes ago when I said about Mark Whipple throwing the ball 10,000 times? I mean, you get Kenny Pickett, Heisman Trophy finalist, Jordan Addison, Biletnikoff winner, and one of the most prolific passing attacks in the country, and your leading running back, who's really, really good, is only going to get 120 carries. Well, you step that number up, nearly double it from 2021 to 22, and you see what happens when you give him sort of that full workload. The running game just wasn't part of the offense in 2021. It was an afterthought at best, and they were good at running the ball. They just didn't do it very much. Well, last season they did it a lot, and Izzy's production went through the roof as a result. So I don't think much changed with him. I mean, I'm sure he got smarter and more experienced and knew how to, got better at reading the offense or reading the defense and all that kind of thing. But for the most part, I think it was just a matter of they changed sort of offensive philosophy. They gave him the ball more, and look what happened. He ends up leading the country in touchdowns.
Absolutely. Now, I noticed something when looking at some of his numbers. He doesn't have a ton of reception, so I was curious if that was more of a system thing, or is that just not really a strength in his game?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, they didn't throw to the running backs all that much over the past few years, even when Mark Whipple was calling the plays, but Whipple liked to go downfield as much as he could. I'm not sure what it is. And I think that probably hurt Izzy, the fact that he had such limited production as a pass catcher, limited film as a pass catcher. I don't think I think he can catch passes, and he obviously can make plays. And I think it's a good way to get him the ball in space and give him an opportunity to, make one guy miss, and now he's gone for a 60-yard, receiving touchdown. But the opportunities just weren't there. And I think, Mark Whipple didn't throw to the running backs as much in 2021. And then last year, their passing game was kind of a mess overall. So I think rather than, trying to get 3 yards on a pass to a running back, they were just trying to figure out how to complete any kind of forward pass. And so it wasn't a big point of emphasis. I'm curious to see how he develops that part of his game once he gets to the NFL. I do think that probably held him back because if you look at his film, you look at his production, he looks kind of one-dimensional, that he's just a guy you can hand off to. And I think that probably extends even to the pass blocking side of it. Like I said, I don't think he was bad, but I don't think it was necessarily something you call a strength of his game. And so that probably contributed to his drop, which I think can be, again, to the Jets' benefit, because I'm pretty sure you can get the ball in his hands. You could probably run him out of the slot if you wanted to and get some productive plays.
Yeah, that's what I figure with a guy like his speed, just getting him the ball in any way you can would make sense. So I was just a little curious on why the production in the receiving game was like that, but that totally makes sense. Another part of his game is 19 career kick returns. How do you view him as a guy who could potentially be a returner at the next level?
So my thing with kick returns always is, the coaching part of it is drawing up a good scheme, figuring out what to do with the other 10 guys. If you can draw up a good blocking scheme and then just putting your fastest guy back there so that if you execute the block, he can go, you know what I mean? And he's not going to get caught from behind. I don't know if that's what Pitt coaches were thinking with putting him back there. I never understood why they yes, he's fast. Yes, he can make guys miss. He's kind of tough. He can break a tackle or two. But good Lord, he's your best player. I don't know why you're putting extra hits on. And I mean, in college, there's hardly any kick returns anyway anymore. It's all just touchbacks, it seems like, all the time, or fair catches or whatever. But like, they continued to put him back there, and I just didn't understand why. I was like, this is like the best thing you have going right now. This is the reason you're winning games, is because of this guy. Do you really want him to take more hits? But then in 2021, when they clinched their division, they did it in a win against Virginia, and he returned a kickoff for a touchdown in that game. So maybe I'm the stupid one. But I think with that kind of speed, yeah, you put him back there, and if you get an opportunity, if you block it up right, he's not going to get caught from behind. So I can kind of see the upside in that. But I never really understood it at college. They have other fast guys. Why do you need to use your best player in that position? But
Totally understand. Totally understandable from the Pittsburgh fan side of it. Now, so someone else the Jets added a UDFA, Deslin Alexandre. What can you tell us about him?
He's an interesting guy. He wasn't terribly productive as a defensive end. He was sort of he was good at freeing up the defensive tackles, freeing up the linebackers. What's interesting about him, and I was trying to remember what season he did this. I feel like it was maybe his second or third active season. They kind of ran into a shortage of defensive tackles, and they kind of got into a little bit of trouble there with the depth, and they moved him inside to D tackle, and he played well in there. So I think they list him at 6'4", 275, 280, something like that. He's potentially a guy, I mean, I could see him being like he's almost sort of built like some of those classic 3-4 defensive ends. You know what I mean? Like guys who aren't going to put up a lot of stats, but they eat up like 2 or 3 blockers. And that's sort of the stature that he has. And I could see him being sort of a tallish interior lineman in a 4-3. And so I think that's, I don't know how far into it the Jets looked, but I think that's got to be part of the appeal, is he's got some versatility to play inside and outside. He's not a great like speed rusher. Like I say, he wasn't all that productive off the edge. He didn't put up a ton of sacks or anything. Good team guy, good leader, great off the field. His family's originally from Haiti, and he did all kinds of, he had a service project this past year where he raised money for Haiti and aid and relief, that kind of thing. One of the sort of, everybody talks about NIL, the name, image, likeness thing in college, and everybody sort of assumes it's just players are getting bags of cash and pickup trucks and things like that. But a lot of guys have used it to raise money for charity. They've been able to put their name on it. And that was one thing he did, is, raise money for Haiti. And so I think that's pretty admirable. He's a great character guy, a good locker room guy. And like I say, I think he's got that versatility to play inside or outside, which could, I think will help him. I would think, if the Jets see the potential there to kind of plug him in to either spot wherever they might need some help.
Yeah, that's awesome. He sounds like a great kid. And from the Jet side, they love guys with that versatility who can play on the inside or out. They have a few guys like that already. Last year in the draft, and undrafted free agency, they've added guys who are similar. So totally makes sense for why they would want a kid like that as undrafted free agent. It looks like there's going to be a pretty nice Jets Pitt crossover this year. I mean, there was going back to Revis, we always had a soft spot for Pitt, but it feels like that's going to continue this year.
Yeah, and like Jordan Whitehead, right, is
Definitely.
a Jet too, and he's a guy who had a great career here, and was really good in Tampa Bay. I think he's sort of quietly one of the better safeties in the NFL. I mean, he's not super flashy, but man, he's really solid and plays well. He's a starter, right? I mean,
Yep.
he's a starter on the defense. So yeah, there'll be a nice Pitt flavor to the Jets, and like I say, Pitt fans will be keeping an eye on the Jets this year, since there's all these Pitt guys out there.
I love it. Chris, where can people find your stuff if they want to follow along?
Yeah, the website's panthers-lair.com. We cover all things Pitt, football, basketball, recruiting. Obviously, keep an eye on these guys heading into the draft, and started talking about some guys who could get drafted next year. And then we're on Twitter at Panther-Lair.
Love it. For Chris, I'm Matt O'Leary. We'll talk to you next time.